meeting of the Santa Barbara Finance Committee to order. Mr. DiMartini, if you would call the roll. It's April 29th, by the way. I think I have to say that too. Call the roll, please.
Great. Councilmember Santa Maria is not present. Then we'll go to Mayor Rouse.
Here.
And then Chair Harmon.
Here. Thank you. Are there anyone here for general public comment, either in the room or online?
Chair Harmon, no hands are raised online.
Awesome. And I don't see anyone in the room, so we will go to our item for consideration today, which is a review of the city administrator's recommended 2-year financial plan for fiscal years 26 and 27 and operating and capital budget for fiscal year 2026. Mr. DiMartini.
Thank you so much, Chair Harmon. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Keith DiMartini. I'm the finance director for the city. I'm here with Ms. Glusik, the city's budget manager, and Ms. Valencia, our budget analyst. And it's our pleasure to present an overview of the financial plan for the next 2 years and the operating and capital budget for the next year. So the agenda for today's presentation is to quickly review the budget calendar. We'll talk about some structural and a few other changes in the city administrator's recommended budget. We will then go into some pretty good detail for each department for the major budget changes that are reflected in the budget proposal. We'll have a slide per department. And then at the conclusion of that, we'll take questions, public comment, and then any other additional topics you'd like to discuss. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Glusik.
Thank you, Mr. DiMartini. Our recommendation today is that the Finance Committee hear a report from staff in connection with the City Administrator's recommended 2-year financial plan for fiscal years 26 and 27 and operating and capital budget for fiscal year 26. Just as a reminder, here is the budget calendar. This has been a long coming product. Everybody in the city has worked really, really hard to get it there. The departments really do work all year, but really make a concerted effort starting at the beginning of the calendar year to produce this budget for your consideration. We are now, if we go to the next slide, this is the budget hearing schedule. We are today at the Finance Committee reviewing this budget. Next week, we will be taking it to the full council. Again, a lot of things have happened so far, but this is where we are today. And our hope is that after deliberations on the 10th of June, on the 17th of June, we will be adopting the budget for the coming cycle. Next slide. So first, just a real quick review of structural and other changes. As seen at our budget introduction last week, we have some organizational changes that are being proposed. Currently, the Housing and Human Services and Community Vitality Initiatives groups are under Community Development, and Downtown Parking Group, including Transportation Administration, are under Public Works. We are proposing to change to move the Housing and Human Services and Community Vitality Initiatives under the city administrator, as well as most of downtown parking, with exception of Transportation Administration, which will stay in Public Works but move under the engineering group. The new group of divisions that are moving under the city administrator will be under a new position, the deputy city administrator, which we are also asking for this term. This is the only addition in personnel that this move is adding. Everybody else is just shifting who they're reporting to. And with that, I'll turn it over to Director DiMartini to talk about Measure I.
Sure. Just to remind the committee members of the staff's proposal for Measure I, the first full year of implementation. We presented this slide last week at budget introduction, but just to remind everyone, Measure I is projected to bring in just over $15 million in fiscal year 2026 and over $15.4 million in fiscal year 2027. Staff is proposing to appropriate all of those funds in both years. Primarily focusing on existing essential services that the city already provides to the community, starting with the police department, funding 34 positions, 3 of which were previously frozen in prior budget cycles because of expenditure reduction targets. Also funding 19 firefighters, 8 park and recreation staff, including adding back funding for after-school program support, which was previously reduced because of budget reductions, funding 5 librarians going forward, and also funding security services and digital collections, which were previously funded through one-time sources, primarily the American Rescue Plan Act funding sources from the federal government. And then finally, funding existing homeless service contracts where there is a gap in funding that staff has identified. So again, focusing on existing services. On top of that, staff is also proposing to include 2 transfers of Measure I into separate funds. The first one is for housing and homeless services at $1.5 million each. That is a completely unrestricted fund, which can be used at the discretion of the city council. And then another $1.5 million transfer in both years into the local housing trust fund. So that is the comprehensive proposal that staff is recommending for the first 2 full years of implementation of Measure I.
And now we will review the departments in a bit more detail for the coming year. A reminder of the fiscal and budgetary challenges that we went over last week. The softening of tax revenues, basically our tax revenues are leveling off to a new normal after experiencing some really strong growth post-COVID. We're having less growth year over year, but it's still going to grow just at a lesser rate. And of course, economic uncertainty. We are looking at implementing a strategic plan formally for the city, so that is going to be very helpful. Of course, implementing Measure I, all of the transparency that goes into that, trying to make sure that our public really understands that we are using that money for what it was intended to be used for. We've also recently completed a class and compensation study, which was long overdue, and so in the coming years, there will be some costs associated with implementing that. And pension costs, of course, always increase. And then we are really, really focusing this year on project delivery. So existing projects, making sure that those get started, completed, and all of that before we start with new projects. And of course, the reorganization, which we just talked about in brief. There are 3 major types of funds where the money comes from. We have our general fund, which is where the tax dollars come in, and that is the mutually beneficial societal goods that the city provides. So your safety services, police and fire, the library, parks and recreation, et cetera, the things that all of our residents can enjoy. The enterprise funds, the shortest way to explain them is that they kind of run more like a business. So it's a pay for play. So if you use it, you pay for it. So the airport is one of those, downtown parking, of course, water resources, solid waste, et cetera. And in the parentheses next to those funds are the departments who are in charge of those funds and how they're spent. The third major type is the internal service funds, and these are, the name suggests, internal services within the city. So, for instance, facilities, if we need something fixed within a building, et cetera, they charge back the different departments for those things. So these are all internal costs. So our first department up is the airport. I would like to mention that on the top 10 list of small airports that Newsweek recently put out, we ranked as number 5. So that's pretty impressive. And I just want to give some compliments to the airport for being awesome. They are adding to their staff this year. They had 6 overhires, and overhires are basically, we did not have approved positions for them. There was a very tough need for that position to happen. So we overhired for those positions and paid for those positions out of other funds by moving budget around. It was determined that those positions should be made permanent. There is an ongoing need for them, so we are adding those positions. There's also an addition of 2 airport police officers and a request for an assistant airport director. The supplies and services are going up substantially this year. This is largely due to the increased use of the airport and increased utility costs with more of the larger carriers coming through. Major efforts, I'd like to note the Southfield, phase 2 of the Southfield redevelopment. This has to do largely with parking. So there is an estimated $1 million savings and revenue, and that is made up of savings from the shuttle that runs back and forth from the remote lots. They'll be canceling that contract because they'll have on-site parking, and so that will be a $700,000 savings, and then the additional $300,000 will be from fees for using that lot. There's also a number of capital projects that are going on this year, and if you have any detailed questions about these, we do have staff on hand to handle them, to answer them for you. As mentioned, our city administrator is taking on 3 different divisions in a reorganization: housing and homelessness, community vitality initiatives, and the downtown services, which includes downtown parking. They are also adding a new deputy administrator to take charge of those 3 programs within the city administrator's office. And we are also having ongoing funding for legislative lobbying for the federal and state level so that we can get our voice heard at the table. There are also a couple of things that are under Measure C. Our Faro Center is our homeless day center lease agreement, and also the State Street Master Plan, $500,000 for continuing to plan for what's going to happen with State Street downtown, which I know a lot of people are very interested in. And then we have the detail of what they're using the Measure I for, including continuing services for homelessness, and also a total of $3 million transferred to dedicated funds for housing and homelessness. Continuing with the city administrator, downtown parking, because it is an enterprise fund, we broke it out to a separate slide. Again, reorganizing and moving, that's all the ambassador programs as well, and the plaza support for downtown is going to be moving under city administration in coordination with the downtown organizations. And they're also going to have a pilot program on their fees for pay-on-foot parking in Helena. Currently, we have different configurations for parking in the city, so we're going to see how that works and then go from there. They're also reducing the commuter permits in the Ortega garage to help with our the population here that are working that have to commute in from other places and make it more affordable to come and work here. And reducing the 24/7 permits in the Ortega garage to $125 a month. There are also several capital projects, but most of them are going to be put on hold pending a structure and facilities assessment, so that we as a city can really look at where we're going to be most effective in doing our capital improvements. For community development, city attorney, I'm so sorry.
Good afternoon. Our city attorney's office is funded by general fund, and it is not a revenue generating department. They have a budget of approximately $5.6 million in FY 2026. They don't have any capital projects or any fee changes. The city attorney's office is consolidating its 4 programs into one city attorney program. Formerly, they were administration, advisory, city litigation, and code enforcement, and it was determined that those groups should be just considered separate groups and not separate divisions with separate budgets, so they have been consolidated into one. They have some material changes in FY 26, which are associated to municipal code amendments, including housing, short-term vacation rentals, etc. The short-term vacation rentals was a pilot program that our council decided to make permanent, and it lives in the city attorney's office. They also have some special projects, Paseo Nuevo, La Cumbre, and State Street Master Plan. Paseo Nuevo and La Cumbre are development agreements.
Apologies again about skipping over the city attorney. All right, so community development. Community development, again, was part of the restructuring with the Housing and Human Services and Community Vitality moving to the city administrator's office. Outside of that, they also do quite a bit. They do all the project planning, licensing and permitting, and enforcement. So there's still a lot going on there, and they do have some fee adjustments for land development services at about 5% in their fees. They also have some new planning fees for coastal development permits and removal improvements of conditional use permits for alcohol retail sales, and some additioning minor edits to the schedule just to make it more clear what those fees are. They do not have any capital projects, but some of their major efforts include the short-term rental ordinance, the single-family planning design board process improvements. And also there's going to be every 3 years there's a code adoption, so that's coming up for 2025. And also the flood insurance related ordinances for flood insurance rate maps and flood insurance studies. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. DiMartini.
Okay, so for the finance department, we have just under 40 full-time equivalent positions, primarily funded through the general fund, most of our operations, but the self-insurance fund is an internal service fund, which funds all of the city's insurance programs and to cover our property insurance and our litigation, liability, and workers' compensation. Material changes in our budget include increasing our revenue assumption for credit card rebates. We're taking advantage of some electronic payment processing, which have some rebate revenue, which we will hopefully achieve more in fiscal year 26 going forward. There were 2 temporary positions, which we are planning to make permanent going forward for ongoing support for utility billing and risk management functions. There is a continued investment in technology for improving our systems, reducing some materials and supplies, and also a significant amount of increased insurance premiums for property insurance, workers' compensation, and general liability. There are a number of fee changes that the department is proposing. Most of these are bringing them up to full cost recovery. These are services that have only a direct benefit to the individual or the business that requires a permit such as this. And there are very, very few of these that are issued a year, but really it's bringing them up to full cost recovery, really in line with the city's revenue and cost recovery policy. A number of projects that the department is planning to move forward with is continuing our audit program for TOT and cannabis, again, electronic payment, a number of budget integration projects, as well as online payment portals.
Our fire department has 105 authorized full-time employees. In fiscal year 2026, they are receiving approximately $3.5 million in Measure I funding, with which they plan to fund 19 existing firefighter positions. They do have a number of capital projects in Measure C, such as equipment replacement, regional dispatch, portable radio replacement, and SCBA replacement. They have some fee schedules in fiscal year 2026. They did have a comprehensive fee study conducted by a third party, and they are now implementing those changes to accurately reflect the current cost for service delivery. Some of the major efforts for fiscal year 2026 include the succession planning, evaluation of fleet needs, fire inspector 3 position, which was a reclassification or a reinstatement rather of an unfilled fire inspector 3 position, the reclassification of wildland specialist from fire inspector 2 to fire inspector 3, and implementation of Genesis, which is a zone-based evacuation software. Apologies, that's still me. Our Human Resources Department has 11 full-time employees with $2.9 million paid out of the general or funded by general fund. They don't have any capital projects. They do have some fee changes, which increase of life scan fees to better align with the Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Investigation fees. Some of the major efforts are the classification and compensation study implementation. In fiscal year 2025, they completed most of the classification and comp study and now they're trying to implement it in fiscal year 2026. They also have ongoing labor negotiations and the Balance You Wellness Program, which has attracted approximately 700 employees. Our Information Technology Department has 33 permanent positions, $11.6 million, which are an internal services fund. And they also have capital fund. They have some Measure C capital, which is $1 million for the radio infrastructure project. They don't have any fee changes. They do have a number of fiscal year 2026 capital projects, such as the GIS database redesign, desktop computer replacement, and network infrastructure. Some of the major efforts include consolidating 2 hourly GIS technicians into 1 permanent GIS technician, and artificial intelligence pilot projects, and modern technology, telecommunication systems. And yeah, but you gotta. For our library department, they have 45.6 permanent positions. Their budget is approximately $9.9 million in general fund. They also have other special funds. They have a few Measure C projects for fiscal year 26, the Central Library Fire Protection, Library Equipment Replacement, and East Side Library Garage. For fiscal year 2026, they do have a second library on the go van in production, and they're expected to arrive in mid-2026. This is funded by grants and donations, not by Measure C. They also will be receiving some fiscal year 2026 Measure I funding, approximately $953,000, which will fund 5 librarians, security services, and digital collections. It should be noted that in fiscal year 25, ARPA was funding some of the security services, and that funding does not continue on to fiscal year 2026, so that is why we're using some of that Measure I funding. They also have shifting funding for print collections to existing restricted endowment funds and added funding for digital collections.
Next up, we have mayor and council. Mayor and council has the council members, the mayor, and an assistant in their head count. There is a relatively small budget, most of which goes to community promotion. So that's Old Spanish Days, the Milpas Christmas Parade, Summer Solstice, and the other activities that you see around town. Our Parks and Recreation program has a lot going on. They are not only responsible for our park spaces, the parks buildings, those public bathrooms, but also the urban forestry. So all of the trees that you see on the streets, et cetera, are all managed by Parks and Recreation. They have a number of major efforts going on this year. The most visible would be the Dwight Murphy Field construction. They also are in charge of one of the enterprise funds, which is the golf fund, and so there is some infrastructure reinvestment going on there. On their fees, every year they really do look at their fees to make the programs accessible to the community while keeping in line with our revenue recovery guidance. And so they do have some changes to facility uses and increases there. They also have changes to the participation and facility use for revenue generation, and some minor fee changes over in the enterprise fund for golf cart and round increases. We are allocating nearly $1 million to Parks and Recreation to fund 8 positions, which include restoring an after-school program, which was suspended while we were working with reduced budgets in prior years. And there are, again, a number of capital projects down the right side of this slide, and there are staff on hand to answer any questions that you have specifically about those.
The police department is funded through various funds: general fund, police asset forfeiture and grants fund, supplemental law enforcement fund, miscellaneous grant fund, and the traffic safety fund and Measure C fund. In Measure C fund, they have a body camera annual renewal project in fiscal year 2026, equipment replacement, and the new police station. They will be receiving some Measure I funding in approximately $6.3 million, with which they will be funding 34 police officers. They also have some fiscal year 26 changes: the animal control fee adjustments, parking violation penalties and related fees, and new proposed fees associated with massage establishments and sole proprietor permits. Some material changes for fiscal year 26 is their vehicle collision repairs, approximately $75,000, and in addition, 1 crime analyst position through internal budget adjustments.
Public Works is another department that has several things going on. We've split them into 2 slides. So this slide has the administration, engineering, facilities, fleet, and streets on it, with a total headcount of nearly 120 people and a budget of $15.2 million in the general fund and $40.8 million out of other funds. They have, every year they do an assessment of the conditions of the city's facilities, streets, et cetera, to help better plan how to replace and repair things as they go through the year. There's also a number of other things going on, including the new police station construction and some attention to stormwater action happening. On their fees, they updated the engineer and transportation planning fees 5%. They are generally in lockstep with community development fee increases. And on the capital, there is some funding that comes in from the State Bill 1 Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Program. That's about $2.3 million, and about $350,000 in Measure A. There are also several Measure C capital things happening, including the annual pavement maintenance at $6 million, some active transportation projects that total $4.2 million, and then several smaller projects, including new auto lifts for the fleet shop and some repair and maintenance around town. Next up, still under Public Works, is water and wastewater, also known as water resources. They have 146 full-time equivalents, and a budget of $127 million, and a capital budget of $34 million. They are really focusing on delivering on their capital projects this year, namely the Braemar Lift Station and 6 miles of water main replacement, which 6 doesn't sound like a big number, but it's all the way from here to in and out is just a little bit longer, so that's quite a bit of pipeline. They're also looking to increase fees, 5% for service fees. The 9.5 and 10.5 rate increases that you see there were approved as part of the 2025 budget process, but we would like to call those out as they are changes in the rate schedule. And then we have some large projects for fiscal year 2026, a $17 million water main replacement budget for the annual replacement. They do work very hard in Public Works to co-locate where water mains are going in and street replacements are going in as they can so that it gets done at the same time. And again, there's staff on hand to, if you have any specific questions.
Our Sustainability and Resilience Program builds energy efficiency and renewable energy, reducing citywide greenhouse gas emissions, recycling, composting, keeping our city clean for litter and waste, and implementing creek restoration and water quality improvements programs. They have a full-time employee. They have 38 full-time employees with a budget of $305,000 out of the general fund. They also have enterprise and special funds, capital projects, and Measure C funding. For Measure C, they have an electrical vehicle infrastructure, which should be mentioned, and is an internal charge station zero emission policy. We are trying to bring our fleet to be the best, most green electrical infrastructure possible. We have 26 fiscal year 26 capital projects: San Roque Creek restoration, Upper Mission Creek restoration, and some of the major efforts in fiscal year 26 is public power supply contracts, energy and adaptation special projects, community resilience projects, and hauler compensation, which is year 3 of the Margaret franchise. So their clean community used to be a solid waste before, and they are still in charge of taking care of all our waste disposal.
Last up, we have Waterfront, another enterprise fund, and the best view of all of our departments, in my opinion. So, of course, with sea level rise adaptation for all the climate change, they are at the water, so they do have that as part of their major efforts. They're also implementing a vessel insurance policy, mandating the insurance levels for those vessels that are in dock. They are also revising their commercial fishing policy and wanting to expand the mooring field offshore. There's a 5% slip fee increase suggested, and we still have fees that are very low comparatively as harbors go. There's also a suggested increase in the commercial ice fee, so when the commercial boats come in and they supply the ice, that's what they have to pay a fee for. And also the cruise ship visitation cancellation fee is having a proposal to increase that as well. On the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see the different capital projects, including the commercial area improvements, the annual wharf replacement, so all of those pilings, everything that goes into the pier and the harbor has to be replaced on a regular basis, and so you'll see that rotating through every year. The mooring program expansion is going to take some effort there, and then the other programs as we go down the list. Again, we have staff on hand to answer questions. And our recommendation to Finance Committee is that they hear a report from staff in connection with the city administrator's recommended 2-year financial plan for fiscal years 2026 and 2027 and operating capital budget for fiscal year 2026. And with that, we'll open the floor to questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from my colleagues? Councilmember Santa Maria.
Thank you, Chair Harmon. First off, thank you to, honestly, all of the staff that is both present and not present on all of your work on this. I wanted to go back to slide 9, which is the Measure I sales tax implementation, and just wanted to get a couple numbers clarified. So where we have our the allocation for 19 firefighters, would any of you know off the top of your head how many active firefighters we have? I'm trying to compare how many we're funding versus the total amount of active firefighters personnel that we have.
Actually, I'll ask fire department staff to come up. There are 105 authorized positions in the entire department, but that's not all, they're not all firefighters.
Right.
Hi, thank you so much. We actually have 86 as far as what you think of as people working the floor. That includes our 3 duty chiefs.
Great. Thank you so much. I have the same question actually for our police department. I believe Chief Gordon, I saw her around here. Oh, way in the back. So it looks like we would be funding 31 to 34 police officer positions. And can you remind me how many we have, or how many positions open we have total?
When we're fully staffed, we have 142 police officers, all the way including myself.
Okay, great. And would you happen to know off the top of your head how many vacancies we have right now?
Sorry, Keith. Currently, I believe we have 20 vacancies.
Okay.
Because right now we have positions, that includes the positions we have held in this moment, too.
Sure. Oh, that includes these 3 frozen ones? Is that what you're saying? Okay. You said 20 vacant?
I mean, you can quote me on it, but I would have to go double check. It's
No, that's okay.
changing, but I think
just
it's 20.
Roughly around there. Okay, great. Perfect. That's all the clarification I needed. Thank you so much. I think that's it for now. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. No, okay, just a couple of questions from me as well. Thank you. So first on, let's see, slide 14, though it relates to slide 9 as well. I don't know if today is the right day to ask these questions, but I'm curious about the 1.5 million dedicated to housing and homelessness, and then the additional 3.5 or 3,500. I'm tired. At 300,000. Let's go with that for homelessness. So, are we saying it's about 2 million to homelessness, and I'm not sure what goes into those specific programs. Just some clarity around that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so thank you, Councilmember Harmon. The 352,000 is existing contracts for service providers for homelessness that had been funded previously with one-time dollars. The 1.5 million is not appropriated to anything yet. So that is something that the council could choose to appropriate in the future, either to a housing project or to a homelessness project. So it's flexible, and so that was the intention, was it would just be set aside. But the 352,000 is for our existing service contracts with CityNet, some of those other providers.
Okay, and to the extent, and I'm not saying that I would support this position, it's truly just a question. To the extent that we would like to use that 1.5 million for something else, whether it's the Housing Trust Fund or increasing funding to some other program, theoretically, that could be done.
Yes, and so I think we're proposing just to set that aside, and then as things come up during the year, or if there's opportunities, it's sort of like it's a flexible fund that would allow the council, upon recommendation from staff, to either fund an additional capital development project or service agreement or some other opportunity that could come up in those areas.
Okay, thank you. It's important to know. Okay, and then on slide 18, the finance. So interesting how expensive it is to permit a fortune teller. Really surprising. And also particularly surprising to me that it's so much less expensive to provide permits for a firearms dealer. And I'm curious if you could speak to why that is, and then maybe this is a question for Ms. Connect. I assume that there are very sort of particular rules around our ability to either incentivize or disincentivize certain types of businesses on the basis of the fees that we charge for permits. But to the extent we have flexibility, is that a conversation that we have had or could have to say maybe, hey, as a city, we're more comfortable with a fortune teller than a firearms dealer, so we would like to maybe invert that. So it's more expensive to become a firearms dealer, and cheaper maybe to do anything else. So those are sort of two questions. I'm not sure how to break that up. Thank you.
Okay, I'll begin. Councilmember Harmon, so with regard to the fees, setting fees, generally our fees are based upon the service provided. So they have to be based upon, the service provided to issue the fee.
Okay.
Cannot be based upon,
some
some
disincentive
moral
or
kind of
incentivized.
disincentive,
Okay.
that the council would choose.
Okay.
So generally, these are fees just related to cost of service.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of I'm just calling that out because it's one on top of the other, but I am interested in why it's so comparatively inexpensive to get that license versus the other ones.
Sure, of course. This honor, okay, great. Thank you. What City Attorney Connect said is exactly how we calculated these fees. We based them by working with our finance team and police department team to ask exactly how much time does it take them to process these various permits and the amount of time to do the background checks and necessary paperwork with those different types of businesses. It does vary depending on those types of businesses, and it just takes significantly more time to process the fortune teller permit than the others that you noted. So it's purely based on the staff time is how we calculated those, and also the salaries we pay those staff.
Wow, okay. I mean, I really appreciate that, but that's just shocking. Council Mayor Rouse.
I think I did come up with one question. It is for Public Works. I notice in the list of capital projects and major efforts, what I'm not seeing is anything about flood control, and what got my attention was looking at the creek restoration projects and the sustainability thing, and I was wondering, number one, if there's any dovetail between those programs, and number two is, do we not have some flood control issues that are in the next fiscal cycle?
Mayor Rouse, this is Brian Demore, Acting Public Works Director. So you don't see a lot on this list because we're looking at the FY26 capital plan. We have a lot of existing funding from prior appropriations for stormwater. And because of the need for police station project funding in 26 and 27, there has been a reduction in the overall funding available for other programs. But we have a decent amount of carryover that's going to be able to be used to address some of the needs that we have in stormwater. When we're talking about more major programmatic effort, Public Works and the Sustainability and Resilience Department are working very closely together to try to secure funding for some high priority projects such as the Sycamore Creek drainage, trying to work from the ocean up and get past the freeway so that some of the improvements that have been made over the past 10 to 15 years can really be achieved more fully. So that's a priority. Of course, we've got the Mission Creek project has been kind of inching its way forward and has made good progress over the past 20 years. There's still work to be done there, and that's in coordination mostly with county flood control. And then they join together at the bottom. The Laguna drainage is another very high priority location. We have a project that's been awarded right now. It's more of a short-term measure that will help operationally, but it won't result in increased capacity. However, the reliability should help during certain types of storm events. But that location is a high priority, and we're always on the lookout for potential funding sources to make improvements there and elsewhere.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that, number one, you're working cross-departmentally with sustainability, because anything we do for creek restoration or whatever should also have that other component as we talk about things like, creek bluff or creek bed preservation and whatnot, that it should also have that ancillary public benefit of helping to control floods. So, thank you.
Thank you, and I just realized I had one additional question, if you'll indulge me, for Parks and Rec, Ms. Zachary. I know we had spoken briefly about the challenges associated with increased costs for Dwight Murphy and Gwendolyn's Playground and the existence of sort of that delta between what we'd anticipated and where the bill was coming in. And I don't know if now is an appropriate time to bring that up, but I'm wondering if that's something we should be considering as we move through. If it's an FY26 issue, should we be looking at potentially, I mean, I know we can't make up the delta fully, but is this an opportunity for Measure I to play a role in moving that forward? And does that fit in? Maybe it's too early to have that conversation, but hoping you can speak to it briefly. I think your mic is off.
Sorry. To answer this question, however, I will say we are diligently looking under rocks for additional outside funding, and hope that might be fruitful to sort of close the gap, so to speak.
And if I may just add on to
Please.
that, I think there are multiple options that the city can consider, and maybe a combination thereof. So Measure C might be a likely funding source, right? That Measure C is primarily dedicated to capital infrastructure and improvements. And so that could be funding that we could seek council appropriation, whether it's fiscal year 26, maybe fiscal year 27. It will take more than a year to fully construct the project all the way to completion. Also, there are potential additional costs for the police project as well. And as council may remember, we did a debt issuance for both the police project and also Dwight Murphy. And so there is an opportunity potentially to do another round of a debt issuance, to issue additional debt to make both projects whole. And so it might be a combination of another round of debt issuance, Measure C cash, or some private donations when it comes to the Dwight Murphy project. So there's multiple options that we may consider.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of timing, I think it's a bit of a challenge. I know we are, and Victoria Strong is working so diligently as well to find private donations, but do we sort of set our plan first or wait and see what money's coming in? I don't want to put the cart before the horse, and what year do we do it in? So I don't want the opportunity to pass us by either.
We're actually bringing the award of contract to council, and with knowing that we have that gap, that we're working in multiple ways to fund. So we're recommending that we go ahead, given the size of the contract, we don't want to wait to have costs escalate further.
Okay.
So that'll be, I think is it on today? It's on next Tuesday.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so the contract will be coming, and hopefully by then we may have some more clarity around some of that funding gap.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. Really helpful. Okay, so we do have a couple of public comments, assuming there's no additional questions. Doesn't look like it. Okay, so we will start here in the room. Mr. Michaels, you are our first public speaker. You'll have 3 minutes at the mic. Please go ahead.
I have a health issue. I have shortness of breath, so I might drop the last word of the sentence. But anyway, thank you for allowing me to present the feelings of the nonprofit Clergy and Laity United for Economic and Social Justice. We want the city to keep the Measure I promise for a meaningful fund for affordable housing. $1.5 million is not a serious amount. That will hardly do anything for what the state wants us to do with affordable housing. So it's something that's really serious, and I think you have to spend more time on it. And also, over 150 people died on the streets over the last year because they didn't have a home. I mean, that's terrible. I would think that would be a priority for where you spend your money to help that out. The other thing that I think you could do is get all these people that don't have a place to take a shower and don't have a place to keep clothes, that are standing on street corners with their hands out. I mean, you see them at all the exits and all over town. I don't think that's healthy for Santa Barbara and the image that's created. So anyway, the proposed 5.5 allocation to the local housing trust fund represents just 10% of Measure I funds. Public safety, by contrast, not that we don't want them to get a big amount, is receiving roughly 66%. But the reason why I bring that up is because when this Measure I was promoted trying to get the votes for it, you put both of those needs on an equal status, and then all of a sudden, housing just kind of way down at the bottom. I mean, it's terrible. Not even close to half, despite both public safety and affordable housing being named as top priorities in the ballot measure and council spending resolution. Another thing that we have, I know that the city employees want a raise. The cost of living is getting high. Many of those same employees need affordable housing. So we need to provide that affordable housing for the workforce in town and even for the city itself. You could spend the money on affordable housing and not have to give them so much in wage increases. Something closer to a $3 million allocation or 20% would better reflect the proportional weight that voters and the council gave to affordable housing.
Thank
This
you.
feels like the leftovers.
Thank you. Your time is up.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next speaker is Larry Severance.
Good morning, committee. Thank you very much. I'm Larry Severance, also with Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. I'm here to add to Jean's voice, speaking out in favor of more affordable housing. I'd like to try to briefly make a few points related to that. Do we have a need? A lot of people in this city call it a crisis. We have a crisis for lack of affordable housing. Are we going to be able to meet that need through retail development? The statistics all point to the answer no. My understanding is most development right now is builder's remedy, and it's limited to 10%, if that, of affordable housing. They're not deed restricted, so how long that will be affordable is another question. The city's recent class and compensation study, as I understand it, I have not personally read it, but I was told that about half of the workers in the city are considered very low income, and 70% fall below the average median income. So we have staff in the city that can't afford to live here, and I think you all know there's a retention problem that affordable housing could help address. In terms of meeting the need, the local housing trust fund is a brilliant thing that was created by the city council, and it's a vehicle that can help meet the need because it can leverage other funds, because funds that are in the local housing trust fund can attract philanthropic matching funds. We want to see that really have about a $5 million commitment per year for each of the 2 fiscal years. We think it's money well spent because it's an investment, and it's a revolving investment. Big question that's been asked is, where is the money going to come from? And 2 sources that have been at least talked about, and I would invite you to take a closer look at. One is the reserve fund. I've briefly read the policy relating to that, and it applies in crises. Is affordable housing a crisis that would justify some use of the reserve funds? The other question around that has come up is that the reserve funds currently are targeted at 25%, which is a larger than usual percentage for a reserve fund, I understand, for cities this size. If I'm wrong on that, so be it. Possible and sources, I also want to mention there's the investment fund. I took a brief look at the policies on the investment fund. You can invest in real estate. There's a 5-year limit, I believe, on investing in real estate. But supposing some of the investment funds were put into projects that the local housing trust fund was doing with a 5-year commitment, they'd be earning a return. So, and it's an alternative form of investment that many financial advisors are are offering these days. I guess my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Are there any speakers online?
Chair Harmon, no hands are raised.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you to our public commenters for sharing with us today. Comments from my colleagues? None? Mayor Rouse? Okay. Well, I will just say, echo the appreciation for this good work. It's always an incredible feat of communication and incredible effort that you put in to bring this all to us. And I wanted to circle back in my own personal council comments onto the Dwight Murphy and Gwendolyn's playground issue. Really glad to hear that's coming back and very much support whether it's another debt issuance or looking at Measure C, and wanted to specifically call out my gratitude for everyone thinking creatively about how to make that work. It's truly a community effort, and I very much appreciate you all putting your heads together to think of opportunities. So with that, assuming there's nothing else, we will adjourn this meeting and see you all at 2 o'clock.